In this video, we're going to review Part B of the excerpt of James Joyce's After the Race from the book Dubliners. In Jimmy's house, this dinner had been pronounced an occasion. A certain pride mingled with his parents' trepidation, a certain eagerness, also, to play fast and loose, for the names of great foreign cities have at least this virtue. Jimmy, too, looked very well when he was dressed, and as he stood in the hall giving a last equation to the bows of his dress tie, his father may have felt even commercially satisfied at having secured for his son qualities often unpurchasable. His father, therefore, was unusually friendly with Villanova, and his manner expressed a real respect for foreign accomplishments. But this subtlety of his host was probably lost upon the Hungarian, who was beginning to have a sharp desire for his dinner. In this paragraph, Jimmy's family is excited about the dinner Jimmy is going to. They desire status, which is one thing that their excessive amounts of money cannot buy. Jimmy is smartly dressed and well connected, due to his association with Seguin, or so they believe. They believe that this connection will improve their family's status. The other character mentioned, Vilona, who is staying with the family. He is focused on food. Again, we saw in the earlier part that he was very happy because he'd enjoyed a really good lunch. And now he can't really concentrate on the conversation because his stomach is growling and he's ready for dinner. The dinner was excellent, exquisite. Seguin, Jimmy decided, had a very refined taste. The party was increased by a young Englishman named Ruth, whom Jimmy had seen with Seguin at Cambridge. The young men supped in a snug room lit by electric candle lamps. They talked volubly and with little reserve. Jimmy, whose imagination was kindling, conceived the lively youth of the Frenchmen twined elegantly upon the firm framework of the Englishman's manner. A graceful image of his, he thought, and a just one. He admired the dexterity with which their host directed the conversation. The 5 young men had various tastes, and their tongues had been loosened. Vilona, with immense respect, began to discover, to the mildly surprised Englishman, the beauties of the English madrigal, deploring the loss of old instruments. Riviere, not wholly ingenuously, undertook to explain to Jimmy the triumph of the French mechanicians. The resonant voice of the Hungarian was about to prevail in ridicule of the spurious lutes of the romantic painters when Seguin shepherded his party into politics. Here was congenial ground for all. Jimmy, under generous influences, felt the buried zeal of his father wake to life within him. He aroused the torpid Ruth at last. The room grew doubly hot, and Seguin's task grew harder each moment. There was even danger of personal spite. The alert host, at an opportunity, lifted his glass to humanity and threw open a window significantly. Paragraph 9, or the second paragraph of this excerpt, describes the dinner. The quote I want you to really focus on is Jimmy, under generous influences, which means he had a lot to drink, felt the buried zeal of his father wake to life within him. This is one of those things that I told you about in our earlier video that said that, you got to make sure you're reading all parts of the passage because it's going to help you on both Part A and Part B. This part is bringing to mind the fact that Jimmy's dad was once an Irish nationalist and truly wanted independence from England. So Jimmy started saying his political beliefs, which involved Irish independence, and then he aroused the torpid Ruth at last, which means he got him really angry. So, in other words, the dinner was excellent until the drinking turned the conversation from music and cars to politics. Jimmy's promotion of Irish independence angered the Englishman named Ruth, until Jimmy is silenced by Seguin's toast at the end of that paragraph. That night, the city wore the mask of a capital. The 5 young men strolled along Stephen's Green in a faint cloud of aromatic smoke. They talked loudly and gaily, and their cloaks dangled from their shoulders. The people made way for them. At the corner of a Grafton Street, a short fat man was putting 2 handsome ladies on a car in charge of another fat man. The car drove off, and the short fat man caught sight of the party. "Andre!" I've pulled here 2 pictures for you. The first one is from St. Stephen's Green. It's one of the bridges in the park in Dublin. And then this is a picture of Grafton Street. All right, so here we're getting another character. So we had the 2 Frenchmen, the Hungarian and the Irish to begin with in part A. Now we've added an Englishman, Ruth, and here we're going to add an American named Farley. That's the short fat man who's putting the women into the car. "It's Farley!" A torrent of talk followed. Farley was an American. No one knew very well what the talk was about. Villona and Riviere were the noisiest, but all the men were excited. They got up on a car, squeezing themselves together amid much laughter. They drove by the crowd, blended now into soft colors, to a music of merry bells. They took the train at Westland Row, and in a few seconds, as it seemed to Jimmy, they were walking out of Kingstown Station. The ticket collector saluted Jimmy. He was an old man. "Fine night, sir." It was a serene summer night. The harbor lay like a darkened mirror at their feet. They proceeded towards it with linked arms, singing Cadet Roussel in chorus, stamping their feet at every ho 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 Raymond. They got into a rowboat at the slip and made out for the American's yacht. There was to be supper, music, cards. Villona said with conviction, "It is delightful."
Ni poutre ni chevaux, c'est pour loger les hirondelles. Que direz-vous de Cadet Roussel? Ah, ah, ah oui vraiment, Cadet Roussel est bon enfant. Cadet Roussel a 3 habits, Cadet Roussel a 3 habits. 2 jaunes, l'autre en papier gris, 2 jaunes, l'autre en papier gris. Il met celui-là quand il gèle, ou quand il pleut, ou quand il grêle. Ah, ah, ah oui vraiment, Cadet Roussel est bon enfant.
So as you can hear, the drinking from the party turned into walking around the streets of Dublin singing French nursery rhymes. And then we keep going. Now we are on Farley's yacht. There was a yacht piano in the cabin. Villona played a waltz for Farley and Riviere, Farley acting as the cavalier and Riviere as the lady. Then an impromptu square dance, the men devising original figures. What merriment! Jimmy took his part with a will. This was seeing life at last. Then Farley got out of breath and cried, "Stop!" A man brought in a light supper, and the young men sat down to hear it for form's sake. Jimmy made a speech, a long speech, Villona saying, "Hear, hear," whenever there was a pause. There was a great clapping of hands when he sat down. It must have been a good speech. Farley clapped him on the back and laughed loudly. What jovial fellows! What good company they were! He knew that he would regret in the morning, but at present he was glad of the rest, glad of the dark stupor that would cover up his folly. He leaned his elbows on the table and rested his head between his hands, counting the beats of his temples. The cabin door opened, and he saw the Hungarian standing in a shaft of grey light. Daybreak, gentlemen. So on Farley's yacht, there was lots of drinking, music, dancing, another dinner. Jimmy made a speech. It says there was a great clapping of hands when he sat down. It must have been a good speech. But this excerpt leaves out that they started gambling, which is bad in general, but especially when someone is drunk. And Jimmy proceeds to lose a lot of money to all the others, but especially to Ruth, who was the ultimate winner. And remember, the only Englishman in the story. According to James Joyce, The Irish always finish in last place. The conclusion of After the Race. The line that I want you to focus on at the end paragraph is that Jimmy knew that he would regret in the morning, but at present he was glad of the rest, glad of the dark stupor that would cover up his folly. This is an example of the word epiphany, in which you have a great awakening. So you see the light, so to speak. And he recognized the truth of his situation. So for him, seeking riches and notoriety leads only to poverty. Lost all his money in the card game. And embarrassment, because he lost to the English guy. And the money man of the guy now doesn't have any. We see again the theme of paralysis. Even though he recognizes the truth of his situation, he does not act. He does nothing to change the situation. And then also we see a good bit of James Joyce irony, which is that right after Jimmy says he will feel bad in the morning, but it's okay because he's happy now, Valona says in the last line of the story that it is morning. Daybreak, gentlemen.